All right, so we are going to start with the basics. And to do the dream regression, or the trance regression, or nightmares for that matter, we have to know the basics. So we are going to start with the breakdown of what that looks like, so that by the time that we get to the dream regression, that you understand what are we doing, why are we doing it. These techniques are so powerful that really are transformational. So the confidence that we get is when we really know what we're doing and how we're doing it and why it matters and how we need to. Sometimes I think I went through this for a long time, that I wanted change to be done this like really quick. I wanted to be like the superhero. I saved you, and that was my way, that I thought that I was doing a really good job. And we're also going to see how sometimes that actually can be very disruptive to the client because they're not ready for that type of change that quick. So sometimes we do have to, like, little by little get them to the point where they get it, so that we don't really create disruption in other parts of their life. With a group that I belong to, we are a group of professionals, alternative healers, and some of them are past life regression practitioners, and we do a lot of investigation with ETs and spirit releasement clients. And the investigations are to understand what type of clients, what type of questions and techniques are put into the session that has the best results for these people that have energy attached to them, or ETs. And what we found out throughout the years, throughout the not the years, the months that we've been doing this, it's been almost a year, is that regardless of the dark force energy or the lost soul or the ET plans, when the person is doing the healing work, a lot of those things naturally disappear. So we don't have to go crazy with, oh my God, I have a demon here, or I have an ET here. Because when we work on the healing part, what the person needs to heal, some of those things naturally are going to fall off. Some of the things are more stronger, so that you need to be aware of that so that you can know how to work through them. But we don't have to be afraid. And I'm saying all of that because at the end of the day, the technique, even with dreams, nightmare, and trance regression, is to heal. So in order to do that, we need to understand what that looks like, right? Which is where we're going to start. I want to share my screen and see if you guys can see this. When we're working with the dreams, we're going to be working with the unconscious and subconscious. And we are learning through doing this type of sessions that there is a lot that happens with our subconscious. Even when you are doing trances, we are in these parts, and sometimes your mental mind comes in and you're like analyzing before you're ready to analyze, and you lose the trance experience because you go back into the conscious mind. But with the trances, I'm going to go through a quick lecture to help you understand what happens with the trances when we are working with the unconscious and subconscious in medicine, whether it is medicine or a dream, which sometimes the dreams can be even more intense than a trance regression with psychedelics or medicine, is because you are really working from the parts of yourself that you have no access to most of the time, that it has been kind of neglected. So you have memory. If you start thinking, okay, about childhood, how many things do I remember from childhood? And if you don't remember a lot of those things, there could be trauma there that is preventing you from having access to those things, right? Or the traumas that you experience in childhood that had developmental, imagine a block. It had a developmental block that it covered the process of you growing. We know that our soul starts coming into the belly, but it doesn't finish until year 7. And this has been, like this is medical, this is scientifically proven that the amount of awareness, consciousness doesn't really come in until age 7. So when what we're doing is, when we know that, is that when we go through the womb regression, sometimes the soul is outside of the body of the little tiny little egg, because it cannot anchor itself fully into that little fetus, because it's not able to hold that much energy, right? So there is a piece of, but the same thing happens when it has a lot of trauma. So the soul, the piece of the soul that is in the fetus, in the little egg, and then, is growing into the little fetus and so on, might come out. The piece that is supposed to be inside, a piece of it fragments out depending on the trauma that the mother, the parents, the siblings, even the environment is going through, especially the mother, because that's the biggest, deepest connection that we have. So even from the womb regression and before they didn't know that they could go back to the womb. And then they didn't know that they could go back to past lives. So when this is, in the medical community, I think even in IFS, Jacqueline, which I know you're taking that class soon, they know now that they can go to past lives. But before it was a no. Before it was like, that doesn't exist. So we in the alternative healing community know some things that are not okay in the medical community. That doesn't mean that they're not okay, because they eventually they will catch up, is what I'm saying. So we don't have to really be worried about that. Most of the people that are going to come to you with dream regression, nightmares, and so on is because they have gone through traditional therapy. And a lot of my clients say the same thing. This is not something that I can discuss with a traditional therapist, because they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they will think I'm crazy and they will put me in in the Looney Tunes. So we know that the soul fragments, and I'm going to try to draw what that looks like, because otherwise I don't think I'm going to make sense. So this is us here. We're having this experience here as, I'm not sure why Natalie's there, but okay. So this is us here right now. But what we know, even when you do, and I'm going to keep saying these things so that you can put 2 and 2 together. When you're doing trance regression, when you're doing psychedelics, when you're doing dreams or having a nightmare, or even having visions, or even if you're not aware and you're unconscious of what is going on, why is this happening, you will have experiences that are coming from other realities and are clashing with your reality here. Because for the soul, all of these experiences are happening at the same time. The soul is timeless. So all of these experiences, maybe you die because you were a witch, maybe you die because you had cancer here, maybe you die because you were being abused, another one because you were you were born and you die alone. You had a family, you lost your family. All of these things are going to be affecting the person here somehow. It becomes like everything is happening at the same time. So this person is being in the dream state, is going through many different experiences, or in a trance, to understand, why do I have XYZ symptom or challenge or block, or why do I feel I cannot have X, Y, and Z? Why I cannot find a partner? Why I cannot get pregnant? Why I had this family? Why did I have to go through this? It's not only going to come from childhood, from this reality, but it's also going to come from other experiences, whether it is in past lives or in other realities, other planets. If you do quantum healing, you know that a lot of the times we can go through other planets to find out answers that are affecting you here now. So the same thing that happens in a sacred plant medicine journey happens when we're dreaming. And this is the soul fragmentation. So when we are talking about soul fragmentation, we're talking about the fact that the soul is timeless. Everything for the soul is happening all at the same time. How does it know what to bring to the forefront? It's going to depend on your level of consciousness, and also your spirit team are working with your spirit to determine, okay, we're ready for this right now. In Spiritism, we know that there is a spirit guide working with our guardian angel, working with our spirit to say, okay, now they're ready for this. And that could be, you know, the feelings of abandonment, feeling of rejection, dealing with everything that we couldn't deal with because we had to put it on hold in order for us to have a life, so that then we get ready to address it. So when we talk about the fact that the soul is timeless, what we're saying is, for that dimension where your soul is, everything is happening at the same time. For us here, everything is happening in linear time. But when you go through an out-of-body experience or a medicine experience or a dream, and you have that lucid dream that felt so real, something started happening. You start believing that there is more to this reality. So when we talk about the soul fragmentation and the timelessness of the soul, this is very important, because you have to, how do I get out of this? Let's see. Okay. So we have to know that for us right here, today is today, yesterday was yesterday, but for our soul, all of these things that are affecting us, that are deep, that are related to the mission that you came here to work on. So you're not going to work on a million lives at the same time. Depending on the mission that you have, you're going to have similar experiences in past lives. And that's how these councils, this is what we find out through studying what happens in between lives. In between lives, you go through a process that some people call it the council, the high council. And when you meet with your high council, you determine what is the mission for this life. And depending on that mission, you're going to have very specific life, past lives, other lives that are going to affect that experience here. Where are those traumas in past lives that are let's say that it's like a leakage, that it leaks to here, because for the soul in that moment, it couldn't handle everything that happened in that moment. And this happens for many different reasons. But again, if we go back to the developmental traumas that we incur in this life, the same thing happens in past lives. So if you had a father that was very abusive, it is the same thing that is happening in another life. You continue with that life, eventually you die, and you come into this life. But if the soul couldn't do the work for that past life, that means that it is your job now here to go through that life and work on that life to rescue the piece of your soul that is trapped in that experience, which is why we do past life regression. We're rescuing the pieces of the soul that is in that experience. So when we do the age regression, the same thing happens. We're doing soul retrieval, or when we go into the womb, or when we go into in between lives. A lot of people back in the days, I think, I don't remember when Michael Newton started doing the life between life regression, but they only do a part of the process to get the information. With this technique, we're not just getting the information, we are actually understanding what happens that is affecting you from that experience here now. So for example, a client that had, we'll call it a soulmate for easier explanation. It has a soulmate. It doesn't want to let go of the soulmate. It is here feeling like I cannot even be happy with my husband. I love him, but there is something within me that doesn't let me feel like he's the one. I feel like something is missing. So we go through, and she had to do that session 3 times, the same experience in 3 different sessions, because it was that convoluted for her. She goes through the experience and realized that she left someone in the between life someone that didn't incarnate with her, but they have been incarnating for many, many different lifetimes together. This time, that masculine energy decides to stay, and she comes, and she comes, she grows up, she gets married, but there is still a part of her that says, I just don't feel like, I feel like something is missing, and I love this man, but I just feel like I'm missing something very important, and I cannot give myself emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually to him, because I feel like I'm cheating, and I don't know who I'm cheating to. Like, it makes no sense. So through the process of the different sessions, she meets this energy, the energy that they used to go always, either, as brother, husband, whatever. It was always both of them together. And in that process, she had the experience of saying goodbye, grieving, saying goodbye to this energy, letting him know, I love you, but I need to do this now, and vice versa. Both of them do that. They have the opportunity to do that. Months later, she's like, I don't know what happened, but to me that was nonsense. But eventually something happened, because I'm finally happy with this man that is my husband, and we've been married for 12 years. So it doesn't matter if we believe that this is real. It doesn't matter. The client has to do the job. The job of the subconscious, whatever is happening in the subconscious, is real to that person. Whether it looks like cartoons, or it looks like robots, or it looks like aliens, it looks like demons, it looks like shadows, it looks like people, it doesn't matter. The subconscious, that's our reality. So we cannot say to a client, well, that looks like a cartoon, it cannot be real. Or you disbelieving that the work that they're doing, because it's the spirit that is doing the work, it's not the person. Sometimes the person says, but I cry at home, but it doesn't, nothing happens. When you are in a session and you're working with your subconscious and you're letting your spirit do the work, magic happens. So if we know that, all we have to do is allow those parts, whether it looks like cartoons or lines, stick figures sometimes, and the person is like, this just looks like a stick figure that I'm creating. It doesn't matter. The soul, the spirit is the one that is doing the work. So we have to be very conscious of that. And sometimes the client also has to be reminded that it is the spirit, the soul that is doing this work. So it's not them, right? So for the soul, for whatever reason, it's creating a stick figure, right? Because perhaps it cannot put, if it's a man and it's going to think, oh, this has to be my brother, right? It's not going to fit in sometimes for these people, especially if they're very mental, or if they cannot allow themselves to put two and two together. So regardless of what it is, we just go with what is coming up. We don't prevent that from happening. So in 21 divisions and in Spiritism, we also know that anything that we do is going to take 21 days for us to see if we pass that lesson. And this is important because also in the medical community, they believe that 29 days or something like that is what it takes for a new pattern to develop or something to be integrated. So when we have this idea in mind, we have to also train the clients to understand that after we open up the session, we are going through many lifetimes. Sometimes people go 10,000 years ago, they go to Egypt, they go to Rome, they go to other planets. We don't know how long. I mean, sometimes the person becomes a rock and they go back to millions of years ago, right? The soul is doing the work that it needs to do, right? So when these experiences are happening, the person also has to do their job to integrate that experience. And that means that it might take them time you have this energetic surgery, you have this surgery of the soul, and then you have to, just like a real surgery, you have to allow time for the wound to heal, to close up and seal. It is the same thing that we're doing here. It said that we're doing it at the spiritual level. We're doing it at the spirit level, at the soul level. So in essence, when you think about it, we are all heavily fragmented. And when we're all heavily fragmented, it's like there is no competition who's more fragmented, like I don't know what it is. We are fragmented because we have to do the job that the soul, we have the consciousness now that the soul didn't have in that experience, so that when we go to those lives, we are rescuing those pieces of our soul. So by definition, you're moving energy through your body, whether it is like we have so many different light bodies that are part of our auric field. So the more energy that you rescue, the more whole you're going to feel in this experience. So you're doing soul retrieval, just like the shamans are, except that you're guiding your client to do this. And if you treat it the same way, with the same sacredness and the same, if you're able to feel the spirit of the person that you have in front of you, you don't have to be perfect. All you have to do is really show up. And what I mean that you really show up is that you really are there without judgments, without your own agenda. And what I mean is the goal is not to prove to someone, especially if you're doing DRT, dream regression, to have someone believe something that you believe, because then we are going to put our own agenda, and our spirit knows when we're being played. So their spirit will know when we're being played. It's the same thing. So as long as we treat this with a lot of sacredness, and we know that we're working spirit to spirit, and it's not me from this, meat to another body that is just a body, but that we're actually doing work at the sacred level, then we're going to have a different agenda of what it means to do that session. And the spirit normally doesn't have this type of experiences in traditional therapy because they're not there yet. And I'm sure they will get soon there, because we're moving towards that direction. In the meantime, people like us, we have to help our clients get to the point where they can open up and share things that normally they wouldn't share with anyone else. And some of these things can be very dark, because in the dreams, we go through a process where we can actually start working through repressed emotions that normally we cannot work through when we are awake. So the dreams can become very spiritual, as well as very in this reality, where you're getting hit with things that are important for this life, things that you haven't addressed and that you need to address now. So another thing is that the fragments is not just in past life or in the womb or in childhood. It can be as adult, when we have a surgery, the anesthesia puts us down, right? A piece of your soul, believe it or not, is hanging out, looking at what's going on. And sometimes it cannot come back in because something else came in. So whether we have accidents, anesthesia, even if it's during birth or after, or if you have like a leg, surgery or eye surgery or whatever, where you were put down, that means that you are going to have a fragment of your energy that perhaps stay in that experience. And that's how we find a lot of spirit attachments, because the person might have had a surgery, and they might say, I had this surgery, and then after this happened, or they might not even mention the surgery, but you, through the process of the interview, you have to know what questions to ask, right? So the person might say, I had this surgery and this happened and that happened, and then the next questions will be, okay, and did you have any surgeries, or have you been to funeral homes? If you work in hospitals, you know that you might be full of energies, attachments. And if you had a lot of trauma in childhood, you probably do have a lot of spirit attachments. And a lot of that also is the shadows that you created due to the trauma. So the faulty beliefs become shadows. Okay, let's stop here. Any questions so far? Because once you work through your healing process, and once you're going through that process of understanding how energy works, which normally happens a lot through the work that you do in the healing sessions, is knowing that all of those fragments are punctures in your auric field. So you have your auric field, and just like we have the fragments, right, everywhere, these are holes where your energy is coming out of. So when you have an accident or an illness, or you broke a bone, right? Like, it's not like you had an accident, like life or death. It can be something so small as something breaking in your body, or spiritually when you're dreaming, it's going to create a hole in your auric field. So that is vulnerable, and we have to seal it. So when you start seeing a lot of clients, if you do have that issue where you feel like you have to, then we'll do this exercise so that you could do that at the end of the day, every day. And also you can visualize yourself putting a net of light around your auric field when you go to these places, so that you don't feel.
My question was about in the beginning, when you first started explaining the soul and how it comes in from ages 2 to 7, I believe you said.
No, from the moment that your parents decided to have a baby, the soul is already assigned to that body. So as little tiny spark, we are all energy. We have billions, trillions of little tiny pieces of sparks that composes this body. So a little tiny spark goes into the experience and start seeing. I had clients where they will go in and start seeing what their parents were doing before they had their first date. Oh my God, look at them. They look so happy. But how did they become monsters after? so, so it starts from the moment that your parents were assigned, that you had that agreement that those were going to be your parents. That experience is that there is no egg, there is nothing. It's just the knowingness, that, which is why when we go through sessions where the person goes through an abortion, we'll have a protocol for that, because even then there is already, even if it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 months, it's already assigned. So there is a soul, a spirit that is already assigned to that little tiny body, or the potential of that body. And yes, that was a pendulum, Natalie. So up to 7 years is when the brain is fully developed. Then you know that you have, but the thing is that we don't, because we have so much trauma. The parents start telling us what we cannot do. The teachers might tell us that we're stupid. The neighbors might not want us. So we have all this trauma that is interrupting the process, so that even though we're 7 years old, we don't have 100% of our capacity, because in every time that you have an experience that is deep for you, that is an abuse on who you are, because your true essence is so bright and so beautiful and so perfect, so that all of these things affect that belief of who you are, your true essence, right? Your soul, your spirit. Then you believe those things, you create false beliefs of who you are, which interrupts also how much energy you have, and is also linked directly to a past life. So every time that you experience a traumatic experience in childhood or as an adult, you're going to wake up a past life, which is why some past lives don't come until you go through an experience that activates it. Does that make sense?
So when you're working with someone or working with yourself with something that's coming up, does it matter where it's coming from? Like, I know for myself, I had a lot of early childhood trauma before the age of 7. So sometimes I don't know if what I'm working through is from this life or a past life, or so does it matter? Do you need to know that, or will it just go with what, like, trusting the soul to do its work?
We trust the soul to do the work. A lot of the time, the person I'll try to take the person to childhood, and they will jump to a past life. Either the person couldn't handle childhood, or the soul decided, we're going to go to a past life because that's more severe, in order for them to have the energy to work in childhood. So it's about the soul. If I believe that there is something, if we have time, there is something that it still feels like it's a little, let's go back to childhood. Sometimes I do that, but sometimes a person, it's almost like the soul knows, this sister is not going to be able to handle this today. We're going to go to childhood, do that, and then hopefully they have more energy, and we're going to go back to childhood later. Because when you go to past life, you're rescuing energy that is going to, your body is going to move in a certain way. The new energy is going to be able to come in, so you have more vitality within you to do what you couldn't do before if you were very low and weak,
Yeah, because I've definitely learned through this process that any part you heal of yourself, whether it be past life or this life, actually heals all of your lives, right? And you will be benefiting every part, because it's all about the ultimate journey is to align with your soul, your higher self, and get rid of all of the garbage that has been brought in, whether it's this life or a past life or wherever it is. So I think you answered my question about just go with whatever's showing up, and whatever, like listening to that voice and not your head. Because I have a hard time a lot of time, this, that I bring my brain into the session and will take myself out. If I'm in my heart session or in my heart, I'll take myself out, and I can feel the change in myself when I do it, and I bring my heart and I bring my head into it. So I guess in that, like, how do you balance that when you have all of these past lives showing up and your brain is getting in the way of it? Or
well, you will pick the one that's most intense. But your client might say, I see 3 pictures. I see 3, whatever. Pick the one that means the most to you right now, or the one that feels most intense, or the one that feels like is the right one to work on. You let the client pick, because if you pick for them, you might just be wasting time or creating a potential challenge, because maybe they really didn't want to do that job. So now you're just wasting time if you pick for them. They have to be the one to pick.
Okay.
You can help them guide by giving them the education of, feel which one is the most appropriate for this moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. MJ?
I have a question. So for past life regression and wound healing, it goes really hand in hand, because from what I'm learning from you, it sounds like that there's no way getting around it. Like there's really probably no such thing as the perfect wound, right? Something was bound to have happened in there. So does it always go hand in hand anytime that in the future, if we're working with clients, that we want to introduce wound healing in order for them to really understand, for us to really understand what happened?
Yeah, that's a good question, because sometimes the client, I had a client just last week from Spain, and the guy is like, somehow he ended up in the womb, but he said everything was perfect, and everything was absolutely perfect. There was no problem. So I'm like, why did he end up in the womb? Which is, normally when you are in a healing session, your spirit is like, we're going to take advantage of this and we're going to do the work. So it normally doesn't go to a very good experience unless the session is to really get the person to feel the strength that they need to go to a severe experience later in that session or in different healing sessions, right? So I'm like, okay, let's continue. And he's continuing. And then eventually he goes to 2 years old and he sees a change. He is perfect. Everything's perfect. His mother loves him. His father loves him. But his mother thought he was going to be a girl. But everything was fine according to him. He was in denial. He's very feminine energy. Like he's an older man, but very, like, he has that feminine energy. He's not gay. And he goes, wow, after the session is over and he goes through the experience and he sees at 2 years old how a shadow was coming over him, and that shadow was polluting his light and his vitality. Like he said that it felt like a shadow, like a curtain of a shadow coming into his mind, and then he's not pure anymore around 2 years old. Anyways, at the end of the session, he says, I wonder if that's why I feel so feminine, because I wanted to be so good for my mother and my parents that I always felt like I had to like be who they wanted me to be. And his mother in the womb was saying, oh, it would be so nice. I can put a little dress. And it sounds so crazy, but I mean, this guy is almost 60 years old or 60 something years old. And for him to realize that now, we'll see how that changes, if at all, right? But it was interesting that he had that. I didn't ask him, it was just something that came up naturally. And we'll see, because normally we, from the womb regression, we tend to experience the womb, especially if the person is very mental, so that then we can take them to past lives. If there is something that they, let's say, you have, I had a client, she had Lyme disease. The Lyme disease came out of nowhere. She saw a lot of different doctors, alternative, what do you call those people? Neuro something. And she was doing a lot of different medical related healings and stuff like that. So she found me to see if there was anything in past lives that may have been affecting her. And she goes through a few lives where exactly the same symptoms that she was experiencing here, she was experiencing in those lives. Months later, she had no evidence of the Lyme disease. Like the doctors couldn't believe it. And it was all because of the past life that she did. Like she's 100% confident that if she didn't go through those past lives where she was being beaten on the head, the hands, and even the leg, her leg will like move like this all the time when she will get a little anxious. And she went through past lives where there was so much trauma to those areas that she just didn't believe it. Like the doctors didn't believe that it was possible either, because it's like, how did you even do this? This is not possible. But the past life symptoms are directly correlated to whatever is happening here now. So it's a process. It's not that is one session is only going to do so much. And as long as we're alive, we're going to have things to do for this life. So we're not going to promise anyone that we're going to make their life better, like forever, right? Because we can only do so much. Some people do therapy for 5, 10, 20 years, right? With this type of therapy, what is his name of this doctor? Dr. Norm Will Ely, I think Healy. I don't know if you know him, Jacqueline, but he swears, and they have done so much research, and they swear by the fact that one past life regression is equivalent to 18 sessions in traditional therapy. So you're doing, one session equivalent to, let's say it's even 10 sessions, right? That you're speeding so much. And that's why after the sessions, people normally have they're tired, or they feel like, oh my God, my life is over. And then 3 days later, like, oh, that's weird, I started to feel good. And then eventually they're like, oh my God, I don't have this problem anymore, or it feels better, right? So you're doing so much in such a short time. And if you follow the steps, you're going to do 10 times more than that. So you're doing work that is at the spiritual level for sure. Okay, so we'll continue from here. So I think the main part of this introduction is to convey the fragmentation of the soul and the traumatic events that happen in childhood are another layer to the past life. But when we also work on childhood, another way to see that is that when you work on the childhood traumas, if you face it at that moment, you might not have to go to a past life. If the client feels complete, is what I'm saying. You're not going to open up another wound by taking them even further. It depends on what's going on with the client. If it's something that has been happening for a long time, most likely you're going to have to go to past lives. But if it's something that is very specific and you find it in childhood, it's not your job to go searching all over the place to go hunting, right? We go to the origin. The instruction to the spirit is to go to the origin. Sometimes the person goes to childhood, and if they come back for more sessions and they still have the same challenge, most likely it's because the answers are going to be in past life. But what I'm saying is, we're not going to go hunting like we have to prove that this person had 10 lives that are affecting them or anything like that. We have to let it come naturally, right? Like we don't want to be like or when you think somebody has a spirit attachment and they're not ready for that, you cannot go hunting like you're the ghost hunter, because you can really do a lot of damage to the person, especially if the person is not ready to do those type of sessions that can really shift your perception of reality. So if somebody is having nightmares and there are very clear things that are indicating to you that they have a spirit attachment, you have to really work very, like you kind of have to like feel it out before you jump in, because you can create a lot of disruptions there with, you know, like we're all so unique and you don't know where the person is at if you don't have a really good relationship with them yet. I'm lucky because most of my clients see me for multiple sessions, so we develop a really good rapport and they trust me to know, right? And sometimes when I had clients that I will jump in, they will completely out of it later. It's like it doesn't help that I took the energy out, because now they're so afraid that they're going to invite another energy. So I had to learn to back off, which is really hard for me because it's like, well, Yvette knows. So
Yes, I do.
I think I left her crazy that day. She went home for the weekend. She's like, I'm going crazy.
Yes.
So then she had to do rapé and a lot of other stuff to remove a lot of those. I mean, it is complicated, especially if the person has a lot of energy attached to them. You work on the ones that are showing up, they're ready to go. You just got to convince them a little bit. Sometimes they put up a show like, oh, I'm not going nowhere because I am the master. And they're just showing up because they're ready to go. They don't be fooled by them because they know that you can help them. I had clients that showed up that I have no idea who they are. And they're like, I don't know why I'm here, but somehow I found you. And immediately the energy will come out. Like, I'm here, I'm the devil. I'm like, okay. So we have to be conscious of that. So it's just funny. Anyway, so I'm going to show you this. Let me see if I can pull it up. This is so everybody can understand the auric. You guys can see that? Yeah, okay. So we all know that we have different levels to the auric field. This is very important, especially when you're doing dream regression or nightmares, because you have to know where they at. I mean, you don't have to know, but it would be good for you to know where they at when they're having these dreams. And a lot of people will know, oh, okay, I have my aura and that's my astral body. They just think the auric is the astral body, and that's saying that I just go to the astral plane. But when you're dreaming, you can go to any of the planes of existence. And the left ones, I call them the left planes because you go to the left planes in the astral plane and you're going to really experience a lot of nightmares. You're going to experience a lot of disturbances. If you have spiritual power, you're going to be picking up the dreams from even your neighbors or even people across the country that are resonating at the same frequency where you are. And it's going to amplify that. So, for example, if you're being attacked by a demonic energy in your dreams, that normally is going to mean that you have a lot of fears, that, you know, things are moving within you. Or if you are going through, a lot of us are going through training to know how to work with these energies, or we still have fears that we need to work through in order for us to not have to be afraid of these energies. And that could be true for all of us, right? So when we know that, we also know that when we look at the dreams, whether it is our dream or somebody else's dream, we know that the dreams are teaching us something about us. All the dreams come back to us, regardless. Like, let's say when I have dreams like so-and-so is going to die. Well, what do I feel when so-and-so? What is my issue with that? At the end of the day, I want all of us to know everything comes back to us. So in that dream that you're experiencing is teaching you either something mystical, something like magical, right? It's going through activations, or you're working through repressed emotions, and all of those things come back to us. So regardless of, you know, I had a dream, so-and-so is going to die, and what do you feel about that? Because that's where the challenge, the trauma for the person is that we need to help them with. If the person, there is also another way to do that, where it is to teach them, get them to the point where they know if it's the message is a true energy, a prophetic dream, or is it a trickster spirit trying to play with them? Because that happens a lot of the time, where the person is having this type of dreams, and it's just trickster energy to play with them so that they can be in fear. So, and knowing how to, for your own development, I'm talking to you as for your own development, not for your clients. When you're going through this spiritual awakening, journaling your dreams, and if you have those type of prophetic dreams, you need to write them down and see if they really came true, or how did they came true, and how long it took you. Because when you're going through those dreams in the future, you'll know in that moment, oh no, this is not happening. Who are you? Show yourself. And you can become really good at really knowing what's happening and why it's happening, instead of just assuming everything that happens in the dream is true, and I have these dreams and they're true. Because a lot of those dreams can also be trickster energy playing games with you. So soul retrieval, what we do in dream regression, past life regression, age regression, womb regression, basically we are doing soul retrieval. You know, the shamans, the medicine women, they really believe that when you're doing work with a shaman, the shaman or the medicine person is going to do the soul retrieval for you. In this type of training, you're doing your own soul retrieval. We are just guiding you to know how to do it, right? So the shaman is picking up the pieces related to the problem that you brought them. They're not going to pick up a million pieces for you, by the way. If something happened and you got sick, and this happened and this happened, and they're doing the soul retrieval, they're going specifically to that, where you left that soul. And we do the same thing, because when you have your client show up, we are interviewing the client to know what's happening, right? You know, I feel really anxious all the time, blah, 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 blah. And you go to the first time of the anxiety, and before that, and before that. So you're looking also for the same link to get to the root of that experience. Making sure that I am explaining myself properly. You have a client that showed up with depression. Depression, you know, depression is repressing emotion. So what is the emotion that needs to be worked on? And through the process of the interview, you're going to find that out. So once you have that core emotion, you follow that emotion back. And sometimes you have to do that for 10, 20 different sessions, depending on how severe the depression is, right? So we're basically guiding the client to go from here to here, here. The shaman is going to go and pick up one. And I have clients that come and do 30, 40, 50 ceremonies, and they go to Peru, they spend a month, and they still have the same issue, and they might be doing integration with me or something like that. And when we're doing the sessions, they're like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. Because in the medicine realm, you're getting the cheat sheets to know what to do when you go to therapy work. A lot of people don't do the integration past the ceremonies because they think that was it. But once you really start taking that seriously, you are taking that ceremony experience and doing a session to go with that ceremony or integration to go with that ceremony. And you're going to get 10 times more out of every ceremony because you're really seeing what you couldn't see before. Because in ceremony, just like in the dream, sometimes you see black and like just black and specific thing, like if you're seeing through, you know what I'm talking about? Like if you're seeing through a lens or something, you're doing this. But when you're doing the therapy, you're going to be able to span that view of what that means for you. And that's what we're going to do here. So whenever we do medicine, or even in the dreams, we're going to have a lot of the shadow pieces come up. I'm not talking about entity attachments in this case. I'm talking about shadow experiences. You create a specific belief based on what happened to you in that moment of the trauma. That belief becomes a shadow. So, but not only that, if it was intense, the shadow that created not only is amplified by potentially an entity attachment because your piece of a fragment of your soul came out and you didn't go back in because it says, I'm not going to be in this family. This sucks. So now you have this empty hole with a faulty belief and something attached to that. So that's why sometimes working on releasing the entity attachments makes it easy for you to work on the healing of the inner child, because now you don't have all of that extra shadow, extra debris blocking you from doing the work that you need to do. So the shadow work becomes very important. So the shadow is not necessarily an entity, it's an energy of the belief that you created. A lot of traumas, they can also be compromised with ET attachments, which I don't even want to say yet because I don't want to freak you out, but don't be afraid. It's okay. So once we work on the shadow, we help the client come out of that experience and make a new belief that is in alignment with who they want to be. So there are different steps to do this, and it's very easy. I just want everybody to be on the same page here so that, we know what we're doing. So